and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. Before we get to the show, let's get the pleasantries out of the way.
First of all, our website. If you want more information about our little podcast, go to wearethecontrarians.com. That's where you'll find links to our old episodes, to our Patreon channel, and to our awesome Contrarians merch.
You can show your support by buying a Contrarians mug or a pillow.
I like the laptop bags myself.
Second of all, if you enjoy the show, tell your friends. Or even go a step further and leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you use to listen to your podcasts.
Finally, if you want to reach out directly to us, that's what social media is for. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Contrarian Prime, or check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/Contrarian Prime.
Julio runs our official Twitter account at Contrarian Prime, but if you want to give me a piece of your mind or just want to banter about pro wrestling, you can follow me at Contrarian Alex.
That's it. That's our intro.
Now, time for the show.
This is all
And we are recording for Contrarians Corner for I.O.
Hello, and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined as always by my co-host and friend Julio. Julio, is this a bonus or is this a numeric episode?
This is a bonus. This is our November bonus.
Okay. I wasn't sure where we were, if we had any numerics that we had to tack onto this, but
We've been bouncing all over the timeline this month.
Yeah, we need to get back on track. A little behind the scenes for you listeners. We've been recording, we've had some episodes with some guests and different friends and whatnot, and we've been recording heavily out of sequence. So at this point, this may be coming out, I don't know, in 2024. I don't know what we're doing here. This movie may come out when Julio and I are recording on the I.O.
Yes.
Who knows? We are here today to discuss the 2019 Netflix original I.O., directed by Jonathan Helpner, written by Clay Jeter, Charles Spano, Will Besanta. None of their names link to anything in Wikipedia, so off to a good start with that.
Linked to each other, though. You needed 3 people working together, shoulder to shoulder, to come up with the epic saga of the I.O.
That's right. And a rotten rating on Rotten Tomatoes of 33%. We'll get to that in just a moment here. This is a patron demand from one of our wonderful, beautiful patrons, Julio, who has thrown the I.O. space station our way, who's taken us to the post-apocalypse.
Well, the I.O. space station is sponsored by Netflix. It's a Netflix original. So who do you think? Which patron do we have that is just in Netflix's pocket, so to speak? None other than Dan Brennick, who has, I guess, started to make this a tradition, just to throw unusual Netflix sci-fi movies our way. Alex, was what? Last year that we did Extinction at his request, as he demanded?
Yep.
This movie didn't have Michael Pena, but I mean, there are some similarities.
Yeah, the Netflix original sci-fi with shit going down and a lot of running and questioning what's going to happen. So yeah, I could see there's some bleed over here.
That's what Dan gets off on. Just these these mid-budget sci-fi movies that are just done strictly for streaming.
I mean, I guess so. He's been one of the patrons that him and Brandon Curtis both have a feel about their demands. You kind of know what's coming, and when you're watching it, you're like, yep, this is Curtis or this is Dan. So the rest of the patrons, keep the wild cards coming, because we don't want it to get too predictable, but we know what to expect when Dan and Curtis are up at bat. January 18th of 2019. Who's the production studio that put this out? Mandalay Pictures, Sunset Junction Entertainment, United Entertainment, Great Point Media. All right.
You're familiar with Mandalay, right? I mean, you have to have at least gotten a jolt of recognition when you saw that little tiger on the screen. Yeah. I didn't know they were still around.
All right, Julio, let's get to it here. Earth is dwindling away. We got to get out of here. Here on The Contrarians, we like to rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. That is our battle cry. Find a movie on Rotten Tomatoes that is highly rated, a lot of times accompanied with that logo and that expression or that declaration of Certified Fresh, and what we'll do with that is cut that movie down to size, discuss some of the maybe bad acting, questionable storytelling or screenwriting, bad soundtrack score, things maybe the critics swept under the rug, and maybe say that high and mighty rating isn't all it may seem to be. Conversely, and like we're going to do on today's episode, we'll find a movie on Rotten Tomatoes that is lowly rated, usually shoot around 30% and below, one of those nasty green splotches known as rotten. And as you could guess, we build that movie up. We discuss the film's positive merit. We discuss bold storytelling choices, soundtrack score, creative direction or cinematography, things that we feel may have been overlooked in the process of accruing this nasty green score. We do this for two reasons. One, in a sense, to say that obviously this shit is subjective. You can be as over the moon about something as you want to be if you set your mind to it, or as downright cynical and just nasty about something as you want to be. Our buddy Marty Scorsese recently, there was a tweet that went around where he kind of made our point for us, where he said the disgusting spectacle of Rotten Tomatoes, because that's kind of part of it too. We're fueled by the idea that these Rotten Tomatoes scores don't always tell the whole story, and they sure as hell aren't interested in explaining, why that may be or why that is. So we're kind of here to do that work for you. But that
was he talking about the Rotten Tomatoes score for Thor: Love and Thunder?
I just saw the clip isolated. It's Scorsese, and of course there's the disgusting spectacles of Rotten Tomatoes and Cinema Score, and that's just kind of what was isolated. But that all comprises the first half, part one of our episodes, and we call that Contrarians Corner. Julio, if listeners want to know how we really feel about the movies we discuss, the movies du jour, they just have to stick around for the second half, part two.
That is correct. The second half of the show, aptly titled Real Talk, that's where we tell you how we really feel. We forget about the gimmick. We forget about the Rotten Tomatoes score. This is just about our experience watching the movie. Many times, like tonight, it's a movie that we haven't seen before. We've never talked about it because we didn't even know it existed. So I don't know how Alex feels about I.O. He doesn't know how I feel about I.O. I know how Dan feels about I.O. because he sent us a review. So you'll get to, once we get to Real Talk, you'll get to find out how Dan feels about it, on top of finding out our thoughts about this sci-fi Netflix original. But until then, we're just going to play the Contrarians game on the first half and say really nice things about this movie because it's pretty rotten.
Indeed it is. Took me a little bit to figure out the lead here, Margaret Qualley.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you were telling me that's Andie MacDowell's daughter, correct?
That is correct. She's Andie MacDowell's daughter. I knew her. Before I knew that, I just knew her as one of the main characters in The Leftovers, which is a fantastic TV show. And you probably recognize her from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That's it. I was trying to figure it out while I was watching it, and then that came to me. So
you needed a shot of her feet before you could really make the connection.
To be honest, I was just too smitten with Brad Pitt in that movie to really notice anyone else. So 33% on Rotten Tomatoes. This Netflix original certainly did not set the world on fire. Julio, what were the critics saying?
Here's a handful of rotten quotes, just green splotches from the Rotten Tomatoes website. I'm going to start with Tess Cagle from the Daily Dot. Our friend Eddie Strait used to work for Daily Dot. Maybe he still does. Mm-hmm. Not sure. Eddie, let us know what you thought of I.O. But in the meantime, Tess Cagle said, to stand out in the noise, a film must have a unique plot, feel eerily plausible, and reveal a profound truth about human nature. Unfortunately, I.O. doesn't accomplish any of that. I think that is a very, very high bar to clear. Mm-hmm. When you're saying that a movie needs to do all those things in order to, I guess, be worth your while. I mean, we just gushed over Warrior a couple episodes ago, and that's
like the entire time we're just talking about how it's incredibly simplistic and takes the most obvious road.
Yep. And it's definitely not plausible. Not at all. No. Well, maybe Tess Cagle didn't like Warrior either. Next, Dan Jackson from Thrillist says, despite some lofty ideas and two talented lead actors, I.O. is more of the same. Uninspired storytelling that feels designed to feed the algorithm more than it nourishes your brain. The infamous algorithm. Alex, did I.O. ever show up on your Netflix page as you were browsing?
No, like the only things that get recommended anymore are like crime shit. Because all I watch in there is like Seinfeld, and I guess Dahmer now has kind of changed the game, but I do not remember it.
It should have been in your 90 minutes or less list.
Yeah. I still maintain that the people at Netflix listen to this podcast and realize that would be helpful to add that little subdivision. And no, it did not show up in there. If it did, I do not recall it.
Well, let's close with Matt Hudson from What I Watched Tonight. And he says, a disappointingly average effort from Netflix. I.O. pretty much ends up being just okay. Shouldn't he have said being just I-okay? But,
I mean, that would have been clever.
Yeah, Matt Hudson that couldn't even muster the enthusiasm to do a decent pun. You know what? I don't know. It's so hard to say what average means when you're talking about Netflix, because there's such a wide range of movies and shows and quality and ambition, the scope. I mean, I don't know. It could be that just perfectly average is more than enough for a movie night. I guess we'll find out as we...
Yeah, what would the expectations for this be? Because to me, immediately a Netflix original, for me, my expectations are lowered. So I don't know. I guess people might just be too fucking picky with this.
It's like, I mean, the whole idea of Netflix and chill is that the movie's an excuse to get some action. So...
This is Dr. Walden, transmitting on frequency 9043. The world we once called home appears to have turned against us. The fundamental principle of nature is survival. It is in our soul to seek life, no matter what.
All right. Well, I.O. is a film set in a post-apocalyptic present where Earth's atmosphere has become toxic. Many humans have fled the planet to live on a space station near Io, a moon of Jupiter. Sam Walden is one of the few humans remaining on Earth. She lives alone at high altitude where the air is still breathable, trying to raise bees that can survive in the atmosphere. Her intent is to use the bees to eventually clean the air via the pollination and oxygen-producing plants. Her long-distance boyfriend lives on the Io station and is continuously urging her to leave Earth. As we learn quickly, the powers that be, this is not too far off in the future, so let's just say Trump is president again, and he decides that it's time to leave. And it sounds like here, when we kick off the movie, that they've kind of let some people, hey, if you want to stay here, that's fine. And, you can, we'll send some people back every once in a while. And if you want to come join us, then you're more than welcome to. But what it appears is happening here is they're like, fuck Earth, we're done. This is your last chance. So, come with us if you want to, but this is it. Is that kind of an accurate reading that I'm getting?
Yes. And the reason being that they're going to, just going from what Margaret Qualley's internet boyfriend is telling her, they've decided to focus all their resources, all their energy in exploring forward instead of keep, coming back to Earth to pick up more people. Now, everything is going to be focused on going to, I don't know, the next planet or the next solar system or whatever, wherever they're going. They want to, they want to find a new planet to colonize. And so they're coming back to Earth one last time. There's just one last, what do you call it? Exodus?
Exodus is the name of the ships that are taking them, yeah.
Okay, so that's, it's like now or never. And so he's saying, baby, if you want us to be together, you have to get on that Exodus.
It's, before sunset. Baby, you're going to miss that Exodus.
That's Anthony Mackie dancing and saying that line.
This movie, at the risk of kind of minimalizing it, and I don't mean to, there's some very simple things of the plot at play here. So if it seems like we're kind of generalizing, it's kind of what the movie does. Because Sam, is there, and, we kind of, it's like a Castaway type thing. Except Castaway was fucking 2 hours and 20 minutes or whatever it was, because we just had to, we get it. He knows how to catch fish now. He talks to a ball.
We get it. Tom Hanks wants another Oscar.
Yes. Whereas Sam here, we kind of see her, these experiments she's doing with bees. We see her at the beginning kind of foraging through the city that's nearby just for supplies or whatnot. Not unlike, a lot of survival video games. There's parts of this that certainly reminded me of The Last of Us. But what happens is a storm comes in and creates a toxic cloud that passes through where she's staying, which is it looks like a planetarium because she has that giant telescope, right?
Mm-hmm. Some sort of I guess the remains of I was gonna say a space station, but no, more like a science station,
planetarium. What observatory? That's what it is.
There you go.
She's kind of got it made there. But what happens is this big fucking storm comes in because again, shit's wild on Earth, man. Climate change is real. And it wipes out everything that she's been working on. So we see she's conducting all these experiments on herself to, see if she can make it. And she also has a greenhouse. And
allegedly she has a dad, but we don't see him, during this first opening.
I was trying to think of how to transition into that, but you're exactly right. Her dad is a character of importance to this story because her dad is played by Danny Houston, General Stryker. And we hear a lot of his voice and his studies, and we see some clips of him on television. And Julio, he's like a denier. Like he said, no, Earth is going to be fine to live in. He basically tries to persuade people away from leaving. Am I reading too much into that? Because that seems like what he was.
No, he is. I mean, in a way, he is. Further down the movie, Anthony Mackie basically puts the blame on him, on Danny Houston, for the fact that he stayed. He's like, I believed your dad when he said that we were going to be okay. He's saying that the planet will adapt, that this is not the end, right? And that's the whole point of his experiments, of Danny Houston's experiments, is that he's going to find a way for human beings and living things to make it through, I guess, to mutate enough to where they can just live in this new environment that Earth has created. I don't know that I can draw parallel to... Is there somebody like that, like in the world today? Like, is there anybody in the world that's like, that's okay, we'll just adapt? I guess climate change deniers kind of have that position, right? They're like, oh, this just happens and humanity will prevail.
Like Trump said, it'll cool down. It'll be all right.
Yeah, it just goes up and down. It's okay.
I mean, that's what a lot of fucking COVID deniers were, is like immune systems. They'll be fine. Nothing bad will happen. That type
Look,
of
some
thing.
people will die, but eventually everything levels and it's all good. Danny Houston is like dead serious, though, in those interviews that we see on TV. He's not fucking around.
No, yeah, he's like on Good Morning, wherever the fuck they are. I'm just like, do not leave. You owe me money.
It's like, this does not work if everybody leaves and it's just me and my daughter in the planet. I need more hands to work the tills. Now, Alex, it's a shame that you haven't seen The Martian yet. Ridley Scott's The Martian, this epic where Matt Damon finds himself stranded on planet Mars.
I still need to see that. You're right.
We will do it on the show at some point. The big ask is that it's like 2.5 hours. But
yeah, I'm
going to spoil a little bit of it for you because it's relevant to the discussion here. And that is that the whole setup of the movie is that Matt Damon, he's on a mission to Mars. Everybody leaves him behind for things that happen. And so now it's just him on Mars by himself. And he's a scientist. So he has to basically figure out a way to survive until somebody can come back for him and rescue him. And so a lot of the movie is just Matt Damon talking to the camera, just recording his video logs as he explains what he's doing to survive. He's like, today I'm making potatoes and, this kind of stuff. It's like...
Not unlike Will Ferrell as Dr. Rick Marshall in Land of the Lost. He has some like captain's logs like that.
There you go. Damon logs. Which is kind of amusing, but it grows old really quickly because you're like, all right, enough of Matt Damon just yapping away, just make things happen. And it was so refreshing to have a similar scenario here where it's just Margaret Qualley doing science, taking care of business, but she doesn't feel the need to really talk nonstop and be a blabbermouth for minutes on end. We just see her working through her routine every day. Every now and then she'll record something of note, something that actually needs to be said, but she's not out there putting on a stand-up routine or anything. She's just doing the work, and that actually makes it feel like it has a little more weight than what Matt Damon does in The Martian, which is just basically him putting on a show. So I was able to appreciate that. I was like, and also the fact that she doesn't have these long monologues while she's by herself really helps you cut down on the runtime of the movie. You know, like I said, The Martian is 2 hours and 20 minutes, and at least an hour and 20 minutes of that is just Matt Damon talking to the camera, explaining what he's doing. Ridley Scott could have learned a little from the three guys that wrote this movie.
So what do you make of Danny Houston here? A little bit of rattlesnake venom will get you type thing, because he's used very sparingly. And, you know, to kind of jump ahead, it's all in a past tense, because he's
Yes.
no longer in the present.
Did you, I guess, before you knew it was Danny Houston, did you have an expectation about who the dad was going to be? Or did you know right away that was Danny Houston?
I thought that was supposed to be like implied right away, that it was Danny Houston. That was her dad. My thing immediately started going like, okay, is he like some crazy like cult leader that we're going to find? Like he lives underground and he's like trying to keep people away? Or I was not expecting him to show up wearing a fedora. That was insane. But yeah, I kind of clung to or accepted he was the father quickly, but then my mind went to, okay, well, what's the payoff to this going to be? What's his deal?
Sam, if there was a discovery, a miracle discovery, I would have found it.
He's such a strong presence. Nothing against Margaret Qualley or Anthony Mackie, but I really, this is one of those things where it's for the best that he only gets, 5 minutes screen time total, because he would have just upstaged them. You know, he's too strong. You gotta be careful with how you cast Danny Houston. I always associate him with evil characters, even though I'm sure he's played normal people. He has a long career, but you know, he's in Children of Men. He's in what's that? This is Wrath of the Titans. That's the second one, right? What's the first one? Clash of the Titans. Yeah, he's in Clash of the Titans. I think he's one of the evil gods. I just see him. He's in, I think, the first Wonder Woman. You know, you can never trust him. He's always a bad dude. And in this movie, I mean, yes, he kind of, I guess, accidentally, inadvertently caused the death of a bunch of people, but in the end, at least he's somewhat noble. He has, you know, good intentions, and it's easier to buy that if you only see him for, you know, a few minutes. I don't know that I could buy an entire movie of Danny Houston being a good guy.
Did you see it coming that he was going to be dead?
No, I will give it 50-50. I wasn't sure. Like, my note says, where's the dad? Who's the dad? And then who's the dad was answered, and then where's the dad became clear soon after. But around the time that Anthony Mackie showed up, I figured that something wasn't right. Because at first I thought, okay, maybe he's just, like she said, out there exploring. But then she was being really cagey about his whereabouts. So
yeah, and then she eventually admits to Anthony Mackie that he's my dad, and then he's kind of like, no way, like really sarcastically. So
I mean, what were the alternatives? That he was her much older boyfriend?
Well, no, because we have is it Elon? Fittingly enough.
Yep, fittingly enough, Elon turns out to be a complete douchebag.
Oh, yeah. Real asshole. The guy that's on IO. And yeah, before we get to our male lead, let's go ahead and talk about Elon here, because he's the romantic interest who, you want to talk about a long distance relationship, they're like multiple light years away from each other, you know, 1,000,000 miles away, that type of shit. They've never met, right? That's
right. So how did this happen? How was first contact? Just like AOL chat, Match.com,
Twitter, like in the dying days of Twitter.
Yes. They both bought a blue check mark. Hey.
We collectively spent $16 on our love. Here we go. You know, Bosley type thing, tried and true trope here, where we have just the voice and we don't see what the you know, in this case, the boyfriend looks like, but it's kind of like omnipresent throughout the entire thing. What we do see who he looks like is Micah, this kind of weary traveler, this journeyman that stumbles upon her land there in a, you know, kind of a fashioned hot air balloon that's like enclosed. It's Anthony Mackie, a gaunt Anthony Mackie. much different than the last time we saw him here on the Contrarians, where he was just fucking juiced to the gills.
To me, he just looks weird because he doesn't have any wings, because he's the Falcon.
Moving on. Anthony Mackie, a leading man to you? You buy him as a leading man?
See, my first instinct is to say, I don't see why not. But I am struggling to come up with a leading man role for Anthony Mackie. I guess we'll find out. I know I just brought up the MCU and it put you in a bad mood, but I have to do it again because, I mean, he's the next Captain America movie stars him. You know, he's the new Captain America. So he's going to have to carry that bad boy on his own. That's the ultimate test. If he can't do it, then I don't know what to tell you. I guess that's it. That's the end of the Anthony Mackie experiment.
But what's his story here? He came to find Dr. Harry Walden, correct? He came to find Danny Houston?
Yes, because Margaret Qualley has been broadcasting these tapes of Danny Houston, his greatest hits. I think this is like in Terminator Salvation when they just play the recordings of Christian Bale giving his inspirational speeches to the troops. Same thing here. It's just Danny Houston talking about how humanity will prevail or whatever. And
he's planning on leaving and getting on the Exodus, but first he wants to talk to Danny Houston.
Yeah, and we don't know why at first, but eventually we find out it's because I guess he wants to tell him that his wife died and it was his fault, right?
He's
like, we shouldn't have stayed, but you made us stay.
He's like someone, you know, who bought into all of Alex Jones's shit. Now is up shit creek without a paddle. So
he's like, I just want to look him in the eye and tell him, fuck you.
Exactly. Want to look him in the eye and say, I think you suck, sir. And then
for shame. He's out of luck though, because he gets there and all he finds is Margaret Qualley and her bees. A lot of work to do.
She initially claims that her dad's like out conducting field experiments and, you know, he's just, oh, dad, you know, he'll be back in a fortnight, that type of thing. But Anthony Mackie, in one of my favorite moments in the movie, like sees her bring in a bowl of tomatoes and lettuce and just his like physical and facial reaction to it. I mean, this is something we talk about in all these post-apocalyptic movies. Like you just be eating fucking gruel or whatever you can get your hands on. I can't even imagine what he's eating. So just to see like a juicy ripe tomato, the way his face lights up and the way he sells it when he eats a radish, he's just like, it's like almost orgasmic. It's a really, really great scene with Anthony Mackie because he, you know, he's like, you have fresh vegetables. He thinks he's hallucinating at first, but she explains, you know, she has a greenhouse and it's a really good scene.
The way he eats that salad, you know what? You've convinced me. He can't lead a movie.
It's all about how you eat in movies, and I mean that like half jestingly. If you can eat convincingly in a movie, Brad Pitt in Moneyball, the way he just like houses that Twinkie, I'm just like, this guy. This is why that's why he's number one. That's why he's the man. But he continuously reminds Sam that they're going to be heading out for Exodus to get the fuck out of there before too long. But eventually, she fesses up that her dad is dead, that he died, and that she buried him next to her mother. We get this in through like a flashback scene where, again, Danny Houston in a fedora shows up and it's kind of like a dream because eventually he says, you know, well, I can't do any of that because I'm dead. And that's kind of how we, the audience, learn. Because at first he's talking like, oh, he's going to be like psychotic and leading her astray here. You know, like fucking Guy Pearce in Prometheus or something. But no, it just turns out that he died.
Oh, and before he died, he basically said, I was wrong. Which just makes it even worse.
Yeah, he was just like, so before I go, just need to let you know, you should probably get off this planet, get off this rock. You're going to die too. This is followed up with Micah saying, you know, well, we're going to get the fuck out of here. I'm going to take you with me. And she goes to tell Elon, you know, I'm coming up so we can finally be together, that type of thing. And then he responds by saying, okay, but I'm about to go on this expedition. It's a 10-year voyage that we're going to be, you know, orbiting this planet to study it and see if it's habitable. And she
please write back to me to tell me that you forgive me before I go.
TTYL. And she obviously is very crushed by this. It leads to this kind of interesting choice where...
Yep. Let's talk about this, Alex.
She chooses to kind of like shower with the door cracked, and you know, the phrase "temptations of the flesh" definitely is comes to mind here as she appears to be, you know, wanting the attention of Anthony Mackie as a male, as a man, and she makes a move on him, goes up to, kiss him, and he initially kind of declines and pulls away, and she says, "We have to." And he said,
"What do you make of that? What is we have to?" As in, like, this has to happen because otherwise we are we're disrespecting nature. Is that what she's saying?
At first, I forgot to mention, because he pulls away and says, "I can't," and I'm like, holy shit, they're following up on his character from Pain and Gain, where he has ED. But he explains, I can't, and she says we have to. So I think it's like her way of saying, despite the fact that getting pregnant isn't always this easy, she says it in a way of like, we have to continue the human race.
Don't underestimate the power of human connection. That's all there is. There is no bigger meaning. Just human connection.
Okay, so because that crossed my mind, and I was like, no, there's no way that's what she means, because like she's putting a lot of trust on Anthony Mackie's seed, which by the end of the movie, I guess it turns out to be, she was right, but still, you're right. I mean, that makes the most sense out of like, why would you say that? I don't know. It's an interesting conundrum, because before this, Alex, how old did you think that Margaret Qualley was in this story? Like, not the actress, but like, because I thought that she was pretty young. I thought that she was just, like before this scene, I thought that she could be maybe even like a teenager, just like a very bright teenager that had been like indoctrinated in the ways of science. And then slowly, I guess I realized that no, it's just that she acts kind of innocent, because the whole idea is that she grew up in this world she grew up in the post-apocalyptic world, unlike Anthony Mackie, who grew up before the apocalypse happened. And now, he looks even older because he's gone through, that transition.
Kind of reaffirming to me, though, he grows as shitty of a beard as I do.
That's what happens in the after times. It's just, there's no time to make it look good. But anyway, it's just weird because, I was not expecting the movie to go in a romantic direction with these two characters, because in my mind, when they first were introduced and everything, I thought, okay, he's going to be a mentor to her, because he just seemed like he was older. He came across as much older and she came across as much younger. But then it was just one of those things where, once the movie kind of like did the setup, I'm like, okay, I understand now. She's actually older than I originally perceived her as, and he is, he's not completely dead inside. I guess. Yeah. He eventually lets himself be convinced. But now, compare his reaction
I could believe that she's like 20 and he's 30 or something like that.
Yeah. Now, compare his reaction to the juicy tomato and his reaction to Margaret Qualley coming out of the shower. Like, what was stronger?
The sexual desire of a man is probably, kind of muted or at least diminished in times like that. So I could get that. If someone like, all right, if I lived in a time where I just had to eat like rocks and shit, and I didn't know everyone I loved was dead, and I didn't really know what, the next day would bring, if anything, I probably would react more strongly to like a steak than sex.
But sex, still sex.
It's still sex. Perfect time for that.
So they have sex. She seduces him successfully. He doesn't put up much of a fight.
I was about to say, it's not too much work for her.
Anthony Mackie says no once.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay. They cuddle next to a telescope.
Now that shit's romantic. I'd be a big fan of that.
They're talking about constellations. No, she's showing him where Io is, right? That's what she's doing. The perfect pillow talk.
He's got that like post-coitus smile and like glow about him where he's just kind of like, all right, I just kind of want to lay down. That's like one of the all-time Dave Attell jokes where he talks about you always get caught masturbating. You never get caught right after you're done masturbating when you're watching TV and playing air guitar.
Yeah, the Falcon just wants to He just wants to take a nap, and she's like pointing at the sky and going like, "That's where my old boyfriend lives."
That's right. See up there? That's why that just happened. We learn the next morning that the Exodus that they were heading towards has a mechanical failure, so their coordinates have been repositioned. They have to go to another one that's 26 hours away, and they were going to travel by his hot air balloon device, and that's not going to work. He doesn't have enough helium to get that far, and of course he's rightly pissed and concerned about this, and then brings this to the attention of Sam and explains, I believe I'm cursed, and then he breaks a jar and his hand's bleeding, and he's really worked up, really upset about this. And this leads into, is this his Oscar clip where he explains what happened?
Yeah, he unloads his backstory, and then he says, "Thank you for your consideration."
You want to know why I really came here? Huh? Your father told us to stay on Earth. I saw dozens of people starve to death because of him. Because he gave us hope.
This is pretty fucked up, dude. I mean, I applaud the movie for kind of embedding this little, very disturbing story in the middle of a bigger narrative. But the idea that he had a wife and they both decided to stay. They could have left, but they decided to stay because they heard Danny Houston on the internet, on Spotify, and they decided to buy what he was selling. So they stayed, and it got really bad, and his wife got really sick, and they had some food put away. And Anthony Mackie says that, well, the food wasn't going to make her any better. It was just going to make her last a little longer, but she wasn't getting any better. And I had to survive. So he just ate all the food instead of sharing it with his wife. And then his wife died. And then he said, "I'm going to go get that son of a bitch before I get an Exodus, because it's all his fault." That's rough. That's you find out that that's Anthony Mackie's big secret, that he let his wife die of starvation. That's a pretty shitty thing to do. I mean, I understand that's he was in an extreme position, but it's a hell
choices
of
were made.
Yeah. It definitely says a lot about his character. And it says a lot about Margaret Qualley's character, that she just goes, "I get it, man. Let's go get some helium."
Yeah, that's basically it. She's just like, all right, is that it? Obviously, people have done far worse in those times. So, yeah, they head out to pick up some helium. It's, like I said, kind of whatever the closest town is. They head down. They spend the night there with their gas masks on and head back the next day. They're packed up, and a little bit earlier when they were using the telescope, Sam had said, before we go, I want to see this art exhibit. And so she says, "I'll be back. I have something I got to do." And he says, "We leave in 1 hour." He's very stern about that. So she goes down and checks out this art exhibit. There's, it's kind of, I think, everything she thought it was going to be and everything she wants to see. So she's pleased with it. Anthony Mackie comes to kind of wrangle her up and say, it's fucking time to go. And this is where we get like her, "I don't want to, I'm not fucking leaving." That moment from her, she just can't do it. Her parents died there, and she wants to believe that her dad's work and all the work they did meant something. And she explains, "I keep having this dream where, I light my lighter and my flame's purple and I can take off my helmet and everything's fine," that type of thing. And
Anthony Mackie is like, I've keep having this dream where we get off this planet and we get to have sex again. So please, just stop fucking around. Come with me.
Yeah, that's great. Let's get the fuck out of here. That type of thing. And so she goes with it, though. She lights her lighter, and she says something like, "If I live, tell people it's safe here," something to that effect. And she takes her mask off and begins breathing. He begins freaking out. She kind of collapses into his arms and keeps reaffirming it's okay. And then we cut to Anthony Mackie still in his mask, taking the he's either in his hot air balloon or he's made it to the Exodus, and he's heading out. And then we close the film with a voiceover from Sam, who says, "Shit's fine here. Come on back."
Dear Micah, My father loved the T.S. Eliot quote, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time."
She explains, that, again, this could be a dream. Who knows? The ambiguity of the ending to this movie's it's mind-boggling. But we see her on the beach. She's made it to the beach because she had never been there before. She always wanted to know if there were still any animals living there. But she's living. And she's explaining, once this reaches you, please explain that it's safe to come back and that we're waiting for you here. And then a little kid runs into the frame.
Little Anthony Mackie.
He kind of comes into focus through the fog. And it's at this point we learn that Anthony Mackie's seed is that powerful.
Yes.
So
One-shot Mackie.
she knew what she was doing. But the important thing, the takeaway here is that, come on back, guys. We're good to go.
Yes. Come help rebuild. I mean, this doesn't exactly come out of nowhere. There is one key scene when they're getting ready when they're packing up. Anthony Mackie finds one of the bees has survived the storm or whatever.
Yes, I did gloss over that. Good one.
Yeah, and that's, they look at her, and they look at the bee, and they figure out, like, holy shit, she mutated, and now she has adapted, basically, to the planet. So the idea is that in the course of her expeditions, Margaret Qualley also has mutated. So that's cool. I mean, in a way, she proved her father right. Like, Danny Houston was right. Eventually, humanity will mutate. But I guess, and this would be something that the sequel will have to explore, right? Like, in order to mutate, you have to be on Earth for a while. It's not that you just come back and now you can breathe. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
She mutated because she was on Earth for all these years, kind of slowly exposing herself to the new environment. All the people from Io, they can't just come back and start building houses or whatever. They're going to have to, go through the process, which is fine. I mean, at least there's hope, and that's the whole point of it. I could have used one final shot of Margaret Qualley just looking at the camera and going, "Science! It works."
It's the bees. I mean, that's been parodied to death, though. So, God, I can't even keep it up anymore. It's just the fucking Prometheus ending. But
do you think Anthony Mackie knows that he has a son back on Earth?
I mean, he knows there's a good chance. It doesn't look like condoms were around or birth control was still prevalent. It's not like he could fucking walk down to Walgreens and pick up a Plan B the next morning. So I think he knows it's a possibility. I think in his mind, though, he's like, I'm like on the other end of the galaxy. I don't have to worry about child support being taken out of my paycheck.
I asked her to come with me several times. She decided to stay. All right, I did my part.
This is on you, woman.
All right. Well, that was Io. Alex, when we started this, I thought that this would be a shorter episode even than Rocky, but I think that we did okay.
All right, we got, when this is edited down, 44 minutes out of Contrarians Corner.
Yeah.
Not quite the hour and 40 that we had on Warrior, but, we made it work.
Yeah. It all balances out. It's just like Planet Earth. We
That's
get
right.
the long episodes to combine with the shorter episodes. It all adds up to the same amount. So how did we feel, really? How did we really feel about I.O., and how did Dan feel about I.O.? Well, you'll find out during Real Talk.
Let's hop on the Exodus, and when we get off, it's time for some Real Talk.
That song.